time for the latest from the eNCA Money Desk. Devan Murugan, you're standing by. The big story continues to be Transnet, the strike, and the continuing implications on different sectors of the economy.
And we are seeing, good afternoon, Rupiwa, we are seeing Transnet now communicating with its clients and customers, saying that there are certain portions of the ports that are not operational. So that in itself will tell you that we're in for a bit of a ride, a bit of a cost on the economy. As we've been reporting over the past few days, the situation has not changed. Strikers are still on the street. Wage offers have not been accepted. Well, many crucial operations, as I said, within those ports, they remain either closed, partially closed, as the strike continues. Business bodies flagging losses of billions of rands if the strike is protracted. Unions Satawa and Untu have rejected a 4 to 5% wage offer from the state logistics company. That information coming in earlier this morning. I want to bring in Gavin Kelly. He's from the Road Freight Association now for his take on this. Gavin, thanks indeed for talking to us. I mean, your members send trucks across the country with cargo. Many of them head to the ports. What's been the feedback from those members? Is there some movement of cargo, or is there nothing at all?
Well, good afternoon, Devan. Good afternoon to all your viewers. There are some parts of the port that are working. We have in the port a mix of Transnet, so the state organisation, and then we have some private terminals. And in some ports there are sections of private terminals, and there are in others. So there is freight moving through the private terminals. They are operating at 100%. If we could get them to operate at 500%, I think we'd all be happy. But unfortunately, that is just the way it is, that the Transnet parts and the ports have either absolutely come to a grinding halt or are operating at such a low input or throughput that it's really not making a difference to the types of cargoes we need to get through those ports.
And the reason I'm asking is because eNCA has seen correspondence from Transnet to some of their clients. And it's interesting you make a distinction between the two, because Transnet is saying that Pier 1 container terminal is not fully operational. They say all landside operations have been suspended until further notice. Now, that I would imagine is the actual movement of cargo from one point to the other inside the port. How much of a span in the works are those points?
That's a huge thing, Devon. If you will cast your mind back to COVID-19, which seems to be far away, when we went into that lockdown, I think it was level 5, that was the actual problem we had, where the ships that arrived at the port would offload their cargo onto the quayside or ground it or land it, as the term is, and then it couldn't be moved from there out into the country for a number of reasons, and one of them was this no movement of goods if they weren't essential goods, if you remember that term. Now we've got exactly the same issue. Some of the crews are actually moving containers off the ships and they're grounding them in the port and they're moving to stacks, some of them. Others are standing where they are, but we now cannot get the Transnet team to move those containers to the points where the trucks would come in and reach them. Private terminals are working, but not the Transnet ones.
And that's what makes some sectors lose some sleep over the last few days, isn't it, Gavin Kelly? Because if you have a perishable, if you have a stock in that container that simply cannot stand there for a long time, that's where the costs come in, because you have got the cost of the actual item, but then on the other side, you have this opportunity cost where you have ships just pass our harbours.
Well, the big problem is, Devon, that you have two types of cargo, really. You have time-sensitive or time-critical cargo, and then you have cargo that it doesn't have a specific time by when it needs to be at whatever destination it needs to be at. At the one end of the time-sensitive cargo, generally all the perishables, you don't want them to stand in containers on the side of the port forever and a day, even if there is electricity, because they will eventually go off. And then, of course, there are very strict times in terms of the customers. And we will find that a lot of our perishable goods, and I think in social media they've spoken about berries and things like that, will just be absolutely wasted. Then you have those components, strangely enough, like computer chips, that are required in a manufacturing process or other critical pieces of a manufacturing process. So they're also time sensitive. So the knock-on effect to to industry and employment within the country or further up in Africa is huge. And that is the problem. That is what will drive the shipping lines away from us to other ports who are quite prepared to ensure they move the freight.
And just finally, as I'll let you go, Gavin Kelly, so, talk about Transnet and its efficiencies, that's not a new thing. The strike is just a new sort of point in this entire saga that we've had. But of course, there's nothing your industry or those related to your industry can do about the strike. You actually wait, you're at the mercy of some sort of agreement that you hope will unfold, of course, in the next few days. And I would imagine you guys would say that's crucial that it does happen.
Exactly, Devon. We can't suddenly step in and start paying Transnet employees. I think we'd pick a stick for ourselves. What we need to do, and it sounds like an empty sentence, but we need to work out how we're going to prevent this sort of thing creating a problem in the future. So do we enlarge the private terminals? Do we actually privatize the port? How do we ensure that something like this, and this is something, and I use the term simple because it's not a major disaster like a weather disaster that we had a couple of months ago. How do we resolve something like this in a way that it doesn't affect the actual daily operations of the port? There needs to be a way that we can find to keep that running.